Yes, thank you very much. I have to agree that I'm pleasantly surprised to see so many people in the audience. My name is not very Icelandic, I have to say. My first name is Frank. My last name is Polish. I come from the middle, which is Germany. Um, Maybe as a short announcement, you missed your chance. Best bacalao comes from Iceland. Actually, 20% of our GDP is the fishing industry, and we run it on a fleet that is over 50 years old. We have a lot of potential to reduce our greenhouse emissions by just buying more recent ships. Another thing is I'm a little bit of an odd person because my profession is in computer science. I know quite little about ships and the shipping industry. I know about the technological infrastructure on which most of you build your systems, right? Your companies and so on. So I will also focus on different ideas. So the first question that we can ask, that I ask myself is, well, what is a technological innovation? And how good are we actually at innovating, right? In my field, I mean, we file hundreds of thousands of patents every year. And you could say that most of them, they are filed for so-called defensive purposes, right? To keep the competition from suing me for patent infringement. This is how we innovate in computer science. So we would like to be able to measure how well we innovate, and one popular among consultants way to do this is Gartner's hype cycle. Right? So you would basically think about this is a good innovation. You would observe how it gets adopted over time, and you want to predict that after like early adopters took it over, you get into the valley of despair where we iron out all the issues that we see from the early adopters, and then it takes and will become a big problem. The problem with Gartner's hype cycle is that it predicted the success of the technology less than 10% of the time. Right? Of all the things, I think the biggest, the example they're most proud of is podcasting. This is a hype technology that's so high. NASA, on the other hand, they rely on the technology readiness level as a measure for how well a product has been developed, which on a scale from 1 to 7 tells you that it's a good idea. This is 1, right? This is something we want to investigate. Until 7, it's a product that you can buy off the shelf. Technology readiness level is about your risk of adopting a technology. It also doesn't tell you little about how well your innovation works. So the true metric actually that you should develop is how well does a new idea serve you? Right? What are great new ideas? And of course, many ideas actually counter certain growth ideas that industry has. A very good example to study in this field is Zipcar. It's a car sharing technology. It's like cars as a service. This is an idea that automakers hate because you sell less cars in a market where people have adopted car sharing to a huge degree. So how actually do we innovate? Right? What are the processes? And if I talk to my students in Reykjavik, they will think about huge ideas, right? Disruptive ideas. But this is not true. Old ideas have a lot of value. I mean, they have invented carbon neutral shipping 3,000 years ago. Right? Sailing ships brought us to America, carbon neutral. Okay? The problem that we have today is, for instance, how to make something like sailing ships that can carry thousands of containers. We can think about these in terms of, this is by Walter Vincenti. He is an aerospace engineer. He thought about what engineers know, right, and how they know. And he identified two ways of actually designing systems. And the first one is radical design, where you don't know how the thing you are going to build is actually to be built. You don't know whether you will be successful. You have an idea and you want to test it. You want to get to do something, some prototype that you can refine on, and that tells you whether it's worth to investigate it further. His example in his book is the first jet engine. Right? Can I build an engine to have its plane fly by just compressing air? And it turned out to be viable. But most of the things that we do, the domain where we innovate is in the so-called normal design. Right? We know at the outset the principles of what we are going to build. We know the features of such a thing. And we have, if we follow a good process, a high likelihood of succeeding in building such a system. Think about sailing ships. Right? We know how they work. We understand the principle. We can try to figure out how to make them larger, how to change parts to make those kind of ships feasible, and so forth. So, but I don't know a lot about ships. I know more about data and how to process them. And computers, they are pretty good at detecting certain patterns in data. What we observe here is, however, the data that we have, companies consider them as their most valuable property today. They also have history. Pen and paper, right, and sending telefaxes has been the modus operandi of many companies in this field. Your database of your friends and people you have to interact in is on a Rolodex, right? It's pen and paper again. And we enter quickly a digital age. There are a lot of technologies actually that we investigate, like language processing and optimization algorithms that can help us to make our systems much more efficient, much more valuable. Right? In, for instance, bulk shipping, I observed there are two kinds of people. And if you talk, for instance, about grain, this is one of the few things that Iceland actually imports in bulk. Some people, like typical bread mills, they don't care what kind of wheat they get, right? You can mix all the wheat into one big ship and they will process it. Breweries, they are much more selective. And they like to have grains from a specific area only. So if I have to serve those two kinds of people, I need to be able to schedule how to transport the grain. And we're just learning it for bulk shipping because all of our efforts was focused on containers. Containers, they are such a wonderful unit for our computation, for our algorithms, because they're all the same size. Right? You can stack them, you can process them in a unified way. And this is what the computer science has law. But how to talk about things like grain or bauxite, we have still to learn this. I talked a little bit about high technology, and this is now what I want to take most of my time for today. So many companies, many people in this field, they have the technology called blockchain and smart contracts for supply chain management and for digital contracts and so on. It's a great idea in principle, but you have first to be constructive because you have now entered the crypto winter. Basically, the high volatility of so-called cryptocurrencies caused many of the participants to stop operating, which actually, if you look at the numbers, save more CO2 than the whole transportation sector on the world can be expected to save in the next 10 years. These are huge amounts of wastages that such innovations create. But the big problem here is essentially that the Bitcoin currency, they try to do the good technology, they try to innovate, but they did it wrong in some parts. So let's think about how we can fix this. And to this, I want to essentially talk about the history, the genesis of Bitcoin and the blockchain hype. So, Sakamoto, the pseudonymous inventor of Bitcoin, published this idea in 2008. A peer-to-peer electronic cash system. At this time, electronic cash was not new. That was invented by Buck 6 years earlier. He created a system called Hashcash, a denial of service countermeasure. And his idea was basically, people send so much spam emails, right? And there's a cost involved in processing emails. So to make it worthwhile to actually send an email, I assign a virtual price for me receiving it. Like you do a meaningless calculation for some time just to prove that you want me to accept your email. Right? And if you're a spammer, you quickly run up a big electricity bill while all the legitimate emails, right? They become affordable in this picture. Okay, so the idea of the creation of electronic money that preceded. The idea of this blockchain technology that everybody talks about it, that is even older. Haber and Stonetta, researchers in Belgium at that time, in 1991, they are credited to be the true inventors of blockchain. And they wanted to solve a very different problem. Okay? So their paper, their contribution is called How to Timestamp a Digital Document. The problem they wanted to solve is that, well, they are researchers, right? They are designers, they are innovators. We want to have a cheap system to make sure to document the date of our innovation, of our documents. Right? Before this, people would have to go to a courthouse to pay some money to get a stamp on it, or they would put their documents into an envelope, address it to themselves, and send it by post. And then the post stamp would be your timestamp, right? Whatever is inside of the envelope was sent before that stamping. And Haber and Stonetta basically said, well, if I can, in a way, create a sequence of timestamps for my document, then everything before a timestamp in my sequence is actually created before the current timestamp. Great idea. So another thing that Sakamoto thought about was to have a decentralized database of all transactions in Bitcoin. The problem of decentralized databases, decentralized data stores, that was already addressed by Lamport in 1989. Where he thought about how to create a database that is robust to adversaries on a system, right? Because in a monetary system, people would like to, in a way, forge money, forge transactions to make sure to enrich themselves, right? To get a financial benefit. And Lamport proposed a solution to this that Sakamoto did not accept for his because it's very expensive. The last part is, of course, if I want to talk about currency or monetary transaction system, is to have some evidence that if I say I transfer money from me to somebody of you, that it was actually me that issued this transaction. And for this, you can use something that we call a digital signature. The idea of a digital signature goes back to Diffie and Hellman from 1976, so it's almost as old as I am. I was 1 year old at this time. So, in some sense, right, if I would have to evaluate the value that blockchain technology contributes, is that it is a bad dish cooked from good ingredients. So what can we make better? Can we make a better dish? Let's go back to the idea of what we actually need in the shipping industry. We want to digitize the process of contract negotiation, of agreeing on a contract. And actually, we rely on two features for this. The first one is that we have a document, probably in a standardized format, that carries our signature, just like we did it hundreds of years ago, right? And we know how to do this digitally, right? We have something that in computer science we call hash message authentication codes, where you take a document, you calculate a mathematical value to represent that now that we are going to sign it, nobody will change the content of the document. And we use cryptographic methods to make sure that actually it was also me that signed this document. And once we have, and this is actually like the process that we go through, right? Today, even with pen and paper. We want to notarize it, right? We want to make sure that this copy is known to all the parties and it was signed at a certain time, and that is what a notary will do. And that can be done with Haber's and Stonetter's idea of a blockchain. And if you think it in terms of this, right, running a blockchain for maritime contracts will generate CO2 in the range of grams. And it will be less of running a light bulb for 10 minutes. This is sustainability built on old ideas, just by combining them in a better way. So what did we actually talk? I mean, we talked the proof of work idea, the hashcash idea that is causing all the environmental emissions. We also dropped the idea of replication, because I mean, there are typically 3 to 4 parties. We don't need to distribute our data to the whole world. It is actually sufficient to have copies in select places. And also for data privacy reasons, right? The companies do not want to share the data with the world, right? It is their property. And the problem to distribute signed documents in a safe way, that is also known to be very cheap, because our signatures actually solve that problem. I think I have used my time, so I skip over this slide. To conclude, in a world, and this is the open problem that we still face, where document formats are standardized, they can come up using blockchain-like ideas with a very sustainable solution, much more sustainable than pen and paper, to come up with contracts, to distribute them, to sign them. We don't need what marketing people and consultants sell you as blockchain, but we need blockchain. Right? We need the ideas behind it, the technology behind it. And this ensures security, confidentiality, which is one of future's main IT crises. Thank you.
We invite all of you to a coffee break, which will be served in the return lobby in the next 15 minutes.